So I'm just watching this incredibly interesting documentary featuring the professor and writer Michael Pollan. It's called How to Change Your Mind, and he's undoubtedly going to be exploring the various ways in which psychedelic drugs can be used to improve your mental state, cognitive functioning, mental health issues, and what have you. And he just started out in this documentary by talking about tobacco, which I thought was really interesting because I'm vaguely aware that tobacco has a number of ceremonial applications in various kind of indigenous cultures of the Americas. Because I did ayahuasca when I was 18. I tried to make it a few times after that, but with disastrous results. And very silly and idiosyncratic ideas when it came to the ayahuasca preparation recipe, which is actually rather simple, but I completely fucked it up on both occasions. But never mind. Yeah, this is really interesting because what this shaman lady, this ceremonial leader lady, does in this documentary, she has a little syringe full of, I imagine, something like pure tobacco. Well, a tobacco solution of some description, probably mashed up tobacco with water, and it's kind of turned into a paste of some description, and she's going to inject it into his nostril. And I imagine that would really hurt. I imagine that'd be really rather unpleasant. And the thing about psychedelic experiences in particular, they're not necessarily meant to be pleasant. They're medicinal ceremonies. Like the ayahuasca ceremony, for instance, it can end up being pleasant, sure. I mean, but it usually does, actually. I should say that. At later points in the ceremony, it does turn into this amazing, blissful, connected, loving. Loving really is the major sort of adjective, I think, to apply to that feeling, that sensation, or that set of sensations. But at the beginning, it's really harsh on your body, and you're purging, you're vomiting constantly, you're shitting and pissing. Luckily, in the ceremony, we had a toilet. In the ceremony room, there was a toilet adjacent to it, so it was easy enough to, we weren't, shitting in buckets or anything like this. So that was one benefit of it. And but we had a bucket each for vomit, and we'd vomit, most of us, quite a lot, or a bit anyway. And just with the disgusting taste of ayahuasca coming back up through your mouth again, when you think you've got rid of it from swallowing it in the ceremony, it comes up again, and this is supposed to purge your body. And I don't know, necessarily what it's purging the body of. It could be harmful bacteria in the gut microbiome. It could be anything, really, I suppose. But I suppose the logic with this tobacco idea, and I've heard of tobacco cleanses and tobacco purges before as well, I suppose it's doing something similar to that. However, I guess the body itself has intrinsic toxicological mechanisms, ways of cleaning the body, ways of cleaning the bloodstream of pathogenic material or bacteria, and so on. We obviously have the immune system for dealing with viruses, and it's part of the immune system as well, I suppose, is it not? It's the various systems in the body which fight infection. So, because tobacco is a harmful substance, we're very aware of its harmful properties, but I'm just led to think, is it not sometimes of value, possibly, to introduce something harmful into the body, something that's not good for it? Does that, in a sense, build immunity, in a sense? Does it not toughen these systems, or hone these systems that are designed to fight infection and to repair the body when it gets damaged? Yeah, I'm tempted to think that if you wrap everyone in cotton wool and really try to prevent them ever from coming to any harm of any kind, and seek to, in effect, make medicine redundant. We'd never need medicine because we live in a perfectly safe world. So I think if you were to do that, you would create a race of creatures where if you expose them to anything in the outside world, anything in nature on this planet, you know, they would it would infect them quickly and easily, wouldn't it? I think they'd quickly die with any exposure to the huge numbers of infectious sources in our environment. And it's not really possible also, because to prevent cancer, for instance, entirely, you need to block them off from all cosmic rays and all gamma sources coming from the environment, which would be incredibly difficult. And you could have practically no agriculture to feed these people, and so on and so forth, would be almost impossible. But it's beside the point almost. I think, you know, the benefit of exposing people to sources of infection, and also conditioning the body and the mind with challenging experiences, because psychedelic experiences can be very challenging experiences, and they can throw up lots of questions for you, days, weeks, months, even many years after you've had a psychedelic experience. You can keep coming back to that experience, and it can still be teaching you something, or seeking to teach you something. And I think it's beneficial that that's the case. And these tools, if you like, these psychosomatic instruments that we have at our disposal, the psychedelics, they do allow you to access sort of higher, more abstract plane or cognitive domains, if you like, and allows insight in a far more archetypal or mythological or symbological sense, potentially, which could also cover things like geometry and the mathematics underlying the universe, or whatever. It can give you insight into nature itself, huge insights. It can make you very curious about nature and the natural world, want to get out in it more, which I certainly don't think is a bad thing, nor do I think could it be a bad thing for us to wish to reconnect with nature, even if that does just amount to, you know, your standards going out to the woods on a summer's day or summer's evening and taking magic mushrooms. That's just, that in itself is like, the going out to the woods itself would be a lovely experience. I think the mushroom trip, if I had a good trip or a bad trip, I'd still enjoy it. Ultimately. I don't wish for a bad trip, but I know that in bad trips, that even that is supposed to teach you something. It's supposed to, you know, signal to you either you become incredibly disconnected from who you really are, or from the natural world, or both, on some level, and that there's a big disconnect within you that you need to sort out. It's kind of like trying to wake you up with like a very serious warning to the emergence of potentially very serious problems in your life if certain behaviours continue or whatever. Unfortunately, I've never had a bad trip on mushrooms, but I mean, yeah, last time I did it, when was the last time I did it? Actually, that probably was the closest I got to a bad trip on mushrooms, was when I went to Amsterdam that time with Jethro when I was at UEA in 2015, and he took mushrooms once and didn't like it. He had a bad trip. Yeah, I mean, I had a good trip. I had a tolerable trip, but then I started taking mushrooms like 2 or 3 times every day, of the strongest mushrooms you could buy, which is Dragon's Dynamite, the magic truffles you get in Amsterdam. I was like, I'm going to try some John Lilly doses on these. And it sort of started turning into a somewhat bad trip. Not a somewhat bad trip, a slightly bad trip. It was slightly troubling towards the end of that series of experiences. And As if to say, like, yeah, you probably shouldn't take this much mushrooms. And that you had more than enough and it's not really going to get you any more high. And you just look a bit silly, a bit foolish. Obviously being on psychedelics. But yeah, it's a great experience. In any case, it's still a great experience, even if it is challenging for you. Even if it does throw up big questions about who you are, your identity, and your state of mind, and what you want to do in life. I think that's a big thing. You know what your vocation's going to be. And for these reasons, they're incredibly valuable experiences, whether you get a good trip, so-called, or a bad trip, so-called. And they can be really, really fun and brilliant. Amazing. So yeah, don't discount psychedelics as a form of medicine. Like, that the therapeutic benefits of mushrooms are phenomenal. You feel just good and clean for about like 3 or 4 days after the experience. I suppose like the message there is like, well, you've got to maintain that somehow, that feeling, you know, of breezy mental clarity and lack of stress. I suppose it can be maintained, but then, you know, the environment always throws up stressors, doesn't it? And, you know, you pull yourself back into it by reacting to things. So maybe it's like often it would be a good idea possibly for people with, you know, more severe mental health problems, possibly to have 16 courses of psilocybin treatment, like 16 trips, instead of, you know, the 16 sessions of CBT, cognitive behavioural therapy. Because almost all the time with CBT given by the NHS, I reckon the psychologist is just talking to someone hopped up on antipsychotic meds or whatever, probably misprescribed, and a psychotic illness misdiagnosed. And yeah, just hop them up on meds so the CBT doesn't work and it's like 1 step forward, 2 steps backwards. And fuck all that shit. Can psilocybin once a week for 16 weeks. I reckon that'll sort out most mental health problems, if not all of them. But yeah, it would, because I annex that to a course of therapy. I'd have said CBT and mushrooms, and try to work through it like that, and we can call the little guy who takes them out to the woods, who doesn't take mushrooms to watch them, the psychiatrist, if you like, if we must do it this way, or the shaman. And yeah, then nice psychologist person to talk through your problems with you, if you want to talk about them, I suppose. In any case, good trips or bad trips, I think they'll be beneficial trips in the long run and in the medium term. So yeah, even though it might be troubling in the short term. So yeah, I think something that's harmful for you isn't necessarily a bad thing. That we certainly don't want to clean everything off the planet and have a nice, smooth, polished rock or anything like that, and remove all the dirt from the world. We can't do that. It's, you know, the effects that these substances have on your mind is rather profound. And it makes me, for instance, a keener learner. It makes me more curious. It makes me more inclined, I think, to constantly reevaluate how I think about something and search for new information, new sources of knowledge. And yeah, I've found them to be some of the most beneficial things in my life, psychedelic drugs. And they've given me a huge amount on an experiential level, and on a cognitive level, and on a mental health level, and an emotional, psychological well-being level, I think. And they've improved my life greatly. I don't think my life would be nearly so enjoyable had I never taken psychedelics. I think I'd be less curious, more inclined to believe dogma, more cowed, intimidated by large groups of people who believe dogma and things of that nature. And less questioning, and less open, and probably less loving. Which would be a very sad thing in my opinion. So thank you everyone for watching. Bye bye. I love you lots. See you soon.